Greetings. Uh, Sitting here on the front deck in my stainless steel art chair, uh, which is something I was part of. But anyway, uh, today I'm going to touch a little bit on a clutching story, a couple of clutching stories. As some might know, I worked in Oliver, then Oliver Moline, and then White Farm Equipment Company for over 11 years, and did did service and worked in the shop and worked as a service manager and worked as a parts manager and well, just did it all, and sold equipment and very various interesting things. But today I'm going to deal on a clutching story. Oliver, when they went to the like the 50 series, especially, even the hundreds series, the clutch pedal was suspended from the dash, from the column that was, the dash was mounted on. And so that made it where it swung down. As you pressed on it, it swung down and forward, and instead of like on the floor, back and down forward, and which put the clutch pedal back further. But on the clutch pedal was just right that a person could keep their foot on it, made a good footrest. Well, holding your foot on the clutch, resting your foot on the clutch might be comfortable, but it sure plays heck with the throwout bearing in the clutch assembly. Well, we had a customer. He was a big auto parts dealer, let's put it that way. Anyhow, yeah, he bought an 1850 somewhere, and anyway, the clutch went out of it. So we went out and got it, brought it in, unloaded it off the truck into the shop, pulled the engine out, turned the engine sideways in the frame, set it down, pulled the hydropower off the back of it, got the bell housing off, and throwout bearing was had failed and gone through the fingers on the clutch. Okay, all right, no, things happen. So we put a new clutch in it, new throwout bearing, put it all back together, and anyway, it wasn't a month later, he calls and says, "That clutch is bad." Okay, we'll have to lick our calf over again, as they'd say. You have to lick your calf. In other words, if you messed up, you gotta take care of it. So we went out, got the tractor, brought it in, throwout bearing again, just totally cooked, and all right, could be a bad throwout bearing. The clutch disc hadn't got hurt. The clutch pressure plate hadn't got hurt yet. So we put a new throwout bearing in it, put it back together. Well, about a month later, got another call. Throwout bearing's out. Well, at that time, we knew what was going on. There was no doubt in our mind that they were sitting there with their foot riding on the clutch pedal, so that for a footrest. Well, we put another throwout bearing in it, and he got charged that time, And I'm going to tell you, we made the charge a little better than flat rate, but in the process, I found a spring. I mean, this spring was a spring, and I put it on that clutch assembly. So when they put their foot on that, rested their foot on that clutch, they were just resting against that spring. When they had to push that clutch down, they had to push it down. It wasn't any easy job to push that clutch down, and that solved the problem. We never heard anything more out of it. I did have to go out there on service call to his place one time, and my cousin had warned me his business. He was out there and he got bit badly by a German Shepherd, and he told me that German Shepherd didn't growl or anything. Said he was unloading some stuff off of his truck, and you know, this dog just come up behind him and bit him, and like that. So I was kind of leery of that when I was working on that something on that tractor. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember that I had big 3/8 inch open end boxed in wrench, snap-on wrench in my belt, and like that. And I kept watching for that dog, and sure enough, here come that dog slipping up behind me. And just as it got behind me, I grabbed that wrench out and I smacked that dog. Oh, I smacked that dog. That dog staggered over next to the fence and laid down. I don't know whether I killed it or not. It was still laying there but it wasn't going to bite me. It wasn't going to bite me. But that was one of the ways we cured a clutch problem there. Well, another clutch problem that was interesting was in the oil field. We had a oil well pulling machine, servicing machine, and that pulled the pipe out of the ground 32-foot pieces at a time, so the top of the mast was about 36 feet in the air, maybe a little more than that, telescoping. So anyway, the crew was trying to pull the pipe out of a well, but it had a packer on the bottom, and this is a device that went around the pipe and then went out against the casing, and so that any water or anything that was running down from the pay above couldn't get into the oil producing pay you were in. Well, to get those packers undone, you usually just unscrew what they call unscrew them. You put they use pipe wrenches and like that, and you turned it, and it would release the dogs on that, and that would release the pressure on the packer or the rubber packer, and then you could pull it out of the hole. Well, this packer wasn't coming out, and so the crew was working on it. I got the call on the radio, hey, clutch is out of this pulling unit. Had a 292 Ford V8 that sat up behind the cab, and that's what drove the well pulling to get the winch, and just the winch, and the cable spooled, and the line went over, and that's what pulled the pipe up and the rods up. So anyway, I went to the auto parts store, got a clutch for a 292 Ford V8 truck, went out and put it in, had to take the big winch truck out, pick up, loosen everything and take everything loose, and the chain coupler and all of that, pick that up, turn it sideways, and then I could get use the winch truck to pull the transmission out and get the bell housing off, put in a new clutch, and put it all back together and put it back in. Well, that was morning's work. Uh, Middle of the afternoon, got the call on the radio, that clutch went out. And so I went out there and repeated the same process. And it was just like the first time. The clutch linings were all off of the clutch disc. And you know, it just literally had been thrown off the clutch disc. Well, in talking with the crew, what was happening was they were pulling on that pipe so hard. They had the truck transmission down in the first gear, and they were really putting the power to it. As the old oil field hands would say, pull the tower to the ground or the ground to the tower. And so they were really putting some tension on it. Well, when they decided that they had enough, they'd pull the clutch in. Well, what was happening was all this spring pressure they had on 1,600 feet of pipe and pipe stretches and winch line, all that pressure had to go backwards. Well, when it went backwards, it drove that clutch disc backwards at a high speed because the transmission was in low gear. So, you know, if the input shaft on that transmission, or the rear shaft on that transmission that drove it, if that thing would be spun at say 5,000 RPM momentarily, well, that clutch disc would have been spun at 15 to 18,000 RPM, and that's what threw the disc off. So I was dealing through our Napa dealer, and he said, well, let's just call the place down in Kentucky that does the clutches, builds clutches, and does our rebuilds. And so we called down there. Both of us were on the phone and talked to one of their engineers, and the guy says, well, he says, I think I got an answer to your problem. And he said, we'll fix it up and overnight it to you. So he did. Went out the next day, or went and got the clutch the next day, and got the pressure plate, the flywheel, and the clutch disc. What they had done, they had put the linings, half the linings on the pressure plate and half the linings on the flywheel, and the clutch disc was just a metal disc. So what happened was the clutch basically was in just reverse of what it normally was, and so when they pulled on that pipe and really hard and then kicked in the clutch, well, the engine would go back to idle when the clutch was engaged, and that clutch disc that was being spun at 15,000 RPM, there wasn't any linings on it to fly off because it was simply a metal clutch disc, and took care of the problem. I don't think I ever had to change that clutch again. So the inside-out clutch, that was another clutch story. So as I can say, a clutching situation. So as I always say, don't take any wooden nickels. Hope you enjoyed the story about the clutches. I'll talk to you later. I'm in my summer garb, so you're seeing my beautiful knees. And my trying to get out of the chair. At least I can get out of the chair.